there's a lot of questions. That caused me to stay up long nights, but it keeps me sharp. And that's something that I felt like I didn't have at light heavyweight towards the end.
Honestly, I think it's a tougher fight than Francis.
Really?
I do. I think that Ciryl Gane, his movement, his footwork, he's so good with his front leg. And for Jon Jones, remember when he came back from OSP, he looked so stiff. Yeah. And that was a time off and putting a lot of muscle on. He just looked like a slower version of himself.
Lots of questions on the table for Jon Jones right now, I think.
At UFC 285 on March 4th, we have a main event that's years in the making. We have the return of arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time coming back to the octagon after a 3-year layoff. The former reigning, defending light heavyweight champion, and who many people believe to be the greatest light heavyweight of all time, and Jon Bones Jones will be returning to mixed martial arts action for the first time since March of 2020 prior to the COVID pandemic. But not only will he be making his return, he will be making his return in a move that many people had suggested towards the end of his light heavyweight run. He will be moving up to the heavyweight division and challenging Ciryl Gamin Gane for the now undisputed UFC heavyweight championship after Francis Ngannou left the UFC and vacated the heavyweight title.
And you're going against one of like the faster heavyweights and the more smoother heavyweights instead of Ngannou where, he lands that hard punch. I could do it, but I could just shoot under that hard punch.
This move leaves some fans in excitement and leaves a sour taste in the mouth of some fans as well. Because although Gane versus Jones is a fantastic fight and a true test as to how Jones's ability will translate to the heavyweight division, this is pretty much all you could ask for. But most fans wanted to see if Jon Jones could take the power of Ngannou on the feet, because one shot from the Predator Ngannou could put Jon Jones on ice and hand him his first true professional loss in mixed martial arts.
It's also a first fight at heavyweight. We really don't know how he's going to respond when he gets hit by a big heavyweight. We don't know anything. So for Jon, it's going to be, can Jon take him down? Can Jon, how does Jon perform at heavyweight? Can Jon close the distance? Is he as fast? What is the 3 years off like? Is he hungrier and even better?
And who knows, we might get the chance to see Jones versus Ngannou later on down the line, but for the foreseeable future, Bones has Gamin in his sights. Ciryl Gane is 11-1 in professional mixed martial arts, his only loss coming to the former undisputed UFC heavyweight champion in Francis the Predator Ngannou, who we've already talked about a little bit in this video up to this point. Jon Jones is actually going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage even moving up to the heavyweight division. He sits at an 84.5-inch reach, while Gamin holds an 81-inch reach himself. So even though he's going to be at a weight disadvantage, I would say, even with him taking the time to put on the weight and doing it intelligently and scientifically, he's still going to have a huge reach advantage. And he's going to have to use that length and reach. But going up against a guy in Gamin Gane, it's going to be a lot harder to use that reach against Ciryl than it would have been against Francis Ngannou.
3 years away, coming back, a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, going up against the #1 heavyweight prospect that we've got in the UFC, Ciryl Gane, a guy that's bigger, a guy that's very fast, mobile, agile, knockout power. He hasn't been here in 3 years. The pressure, can I still do it? Have I still got it? Am I still going to be able to go 5 rounds at a fast pace? All these things, all these questions.
Because Gane is one of the most elusive, fleet-footed, and technical fighters that have ever graced the heavyweight division and combat sports alike. So Jones being used to using that long reach and using those teeps, elliptical kicks, and long-range elbows with the frames to keep the opponent at distance is going to be harder against a man who's not going to walk straight in his face and play on the front lines. He's going to be using head movement, stance changes, angle shifts, and a lot of fakes and feints disguising the stance changes to have Jones walking into weapons that he doesn't see coming. He puts up the perfect smoke screen and ghosts his weapons to the point where you can't see it until it's too late. Just like the high kick that he landed against tuivasa, which eventually led to him getting rocked and led up to the finish in that fight. We've seen Gane get hurt in the past, but the only man who's ever been able to put him on skates was tuivasa, but he was able to come back and win that fight via a late TKO in the championship rounds in a phenomenal main event and one of the best heavyweight fights in the history of the game. We've also seen Jon Jones get tested in his MMA career, and we can look back to his last 2 fights before he called it quits right before the pandemic era. He had a very, very close unanimous decision win, or I believe it was a split decision win, against Thiago Magenta Santos, a former middleweight moving up to light heavyweight. And even though Jones did enough to win that fight, and some people believed that Thiago Santos did enough to become the new UFC light heavyweight champion, Santos was basically fighting on one leg after ripping one of his knees completely apart early on in the contest. And then going into the fight against Dominic Reyes, that's a fight that a lot of fans believe Jones arguably lost. We had a lot of people believing that Dominic Reyes had scored a 48-47 unanimous decision to become the new champion in the last pay-per-view that occurred, or one of the last pay-per-views that occurred prior to the pandemic era. However, the judges read the decision for Jon Jones, and he was able to successfully retain his UFC light heavyweight championship the last time we saw him inside the octagon. Now, he's taken a lot of time to gain weight and do it the right way and do it intelligently so that he has the correct frame in going up to the heavyweight division, because people in that division, whether it's Ngannou, Curtis Blades, Ciryl Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Tai Tuivasa, they're going to be stronger, but Jones is going to be more technical than almost any heavyweight in the division, except the one he decided to come back against. Ciryl Gane is, like I said, one of the most technical strikers in the heavyweight division, probably the most technical striker in the heavyweight division, and one of the most technical strikers in all of combat sports. The guy is going to be able to fight at a range that Jones is not used to, and the only time we've ever seen somebody use range and distance striking against Jon Jones, he had a very difficult time, and that was against Alexander Gustafsson in their first fight at UFC 165, where Jones got by the skin of his teeth, scoring another 48-47 unanimous decision. But it was a long, rangy striker, more of a boxer than a kickboxer though, and that's something that Gane is going to bring in. Gane can throw crescent kicks, front kicks, side kicks, elbows, knees, flying knees, and he can also jump down into the Ashigarami game and lock up heel hooks like we've seen him showcase throughout his UFC career. So this is going to be not only one of the most well-rounded fighters that Jones could ever fight in his career, but one of the most well-rounded fighters that has graced the UFC heavyweight division since its upbringing. And it's kind of crazy considering that he only has 12 professional fights in MMA, despite a vast experience in professional kickboxing. The one area where most people believe Jones is going to have success here is in the wrestling aspect of MMA. If he can get in on the hips of Ciryl Gane, take him down, or even enter the clinch using elbows over the top, knees, upward elbows, and even 6 to 12 elbows, I guess, a little bit of a different take on the 12 to 6 elbows, which is the only way he lost in his MMA career via disqualification to Matt Hamill, landing a 12 to 6 elbow, then he can have some success there as well. But getting in on the hips and taking down Ciryl Gane is going to be where he can exploit the biggest advantage he has in this fight overall.
The immediate thought is Jones is going to use his wrestling to beat him. That's going on in my group message right now. But you've got to think, after Francis took Ciryl Gane down last year to win that fight, that Ciryl Gane has worked diligently in order to improve his takedown defense. So what happens if Jones can't take Ciryl Gane down?
We've seen Ciryl Gane have trouble with wrestling, and it was against a man who's not even known as a wrestler in Francis the Predator Ngannou, who was able to take him down, catch his kicks, and get takedowns, and use his overall better wrestling to secure 3 out of the 5 rounds and retain his heavyweight championship due to a unanimous decision. However, Jones is a different animal, and if Jones is able to get Ciryl down to the floor, Ciryl is going to be a fish out of water. And against some opponents, he might be able to use decent grappling to showcase submission skills and his ability to work back up to his feet. And I'm sure he has worked extensively since the loss to Ngannou, but Jones is not somebody you're going to want on top of you. And if Jones gets Ciryl down and works in the half guard, the full mount, the side control, taking the back and getting the hooks in and flattening him out, then Jones is going to pound Ciryl Gane into the mat with vicious elbows and punches and eventually either submit him or TKO him all in the same. Either way, this is an extremely interesting fight and the picture-perfect test for Jon Jones in his return to MMA and his first fight up in the UFC heavyweight division. I understand why a lot of people are using Jones' previous GOAT status to think that he's going to walk through Ciryl Gane going into this heavyweight test. However, I think Gane is a lot more tricky of a fight for Jones and probably the most challenging puzzle Jones has had to solve in his entire MMA career. On Saturday, March 4th, we are going to be treated to one of the most technical heavyweight fights in the history of mixed martial arts competition. Gamin, one of the most elusive strikers in the heavyweight division, going up against Jon Bones Jones, the former reigning defending light heavyweight champion, and who many believe to be the greatest of all time to ever step into the cage and step onto the 8-sided ring in the octagon. Jones versus Gane, Bones versus Gamin. Who's going to walk out as the new undisputed UFC heavyweight champion? Will Gamin claim status to being one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time by beating a former greatest of all time and who many people believe to be the current greatest of all time? Or will Jon Jones cement his status and, aside from all of the hiccups he's had throughout his career and personal life, become the untouchable greatest mixed martial artist to ever grace the sport? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Land an elliptical kick on the like button and a spinning back elbow on the subscribe button. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.